What makes one the greatest of all time? What makes a legend a legend? How does someone write themselves down in history to be remembered as a champion? The champion. There are few names everyone knows, recognized as the greatest of their genre. Jordan, Usain Phelps, Gretzky, Federer, Messi, Carlsen, Hakuho. Remembered by just one name. Competition breeds greatness, pushes people forward, and makes others strive for the best. But to strive for the best, there has to be a best. GOATs. No, not those, but the greatest of all time. Competitors who set the bar for generations and inspire others to reach it. But what does it take to earn that title? I want to talk about my favorite example, Hakuho Sho, undeniably the greatest sumo wrestler to ever step foot in the dojo. So how did he get there? To know that, we must take a look back at his roots. History, heritage, ancestry, the childhood curiosity that sparks an inspiration which ignites the fires of motivation to follow one's young, optimistic dreams. Believe it or not, Hakuho was born in Mongolia from a different goat. In the 1968 Summer Olympics, his father, Jingjiring Mangbat, won the silver medal in men's freestyle middleweight wrestling, which was Mongolia's first ever Olympic medal. Silver is not something a goat would win, one might say, but this man wasn't even a traditional wrestler. What he practiced was Mongolian wrestling, a sport with practically the same rules as sumo, just no dohyo, and only a small rope tied around their waist alongside traditional garb. At the time, Mangbat held the highest ranking in Mongolian wrestling, and is in the top 4 greatest Mongolian wrestlers of all time. Hakuho was born well after Mangbat's heyday, but was still surrounded by the world of Mongolian wrestling, as his father was such an important figure and coach. So, was being the son of an Olympic athlete and grand champion the catalyst for Hakuho becoming the greatest sumo wrestler of all time? A wise man once said, "With great genetics comes great responsibility." But Hakuho didn't rely on his genetics alone to rise to the top. It's not something you're born with, but something you obtain. A quality you train through experience gained. Mastery of the craft, that's what Hakuho had. Although Hakuho grew up surrounded by Mongolian wrestling, and even participated in it, that didn't give him a natural advantage. Other competitors have grown up in sumo since they were children. When he dove into the world of sumo at 15, nobody wanted him. He was short, skinny, and unathletic. But one elder gave him a chance, which allowed him to grow and gain weight after a month into his journey. Slowly but surely, Hakuho was able to refine his brand of sumo. But you can't talk about Hakuho's increase in skill and rise to greatness without first mentioning Asa Shoryu, the first Mongolian yokozuna, the highest ranking one can achieve in sumo. When people bring up the topic of greatest sumo wrestler of all time, there will always be a few who mention his name. And it just so happens he was childhood friends with Hakuho. Being a few years older than him, Asa Shoryu was like a mentor to Hakuho, teaching him everything he knew, until the day came where Hakuho was a legitimate threat to Asa. This was the bout Hakuho won over him to win the tournament and be promoted to the equal rank of Yokozuna. Unfortunately, Asa Shoryu had to retire at the peak of their rivalry, leaving Hakuho with one loss behind Asa, and practically free reign to dominate the sport for the next 10 years. To understand how Hakuho was so commanding over sumo, we must first take a look at his style. The techniques he used to etch himself into history, winning tournament after tournament. If you didn't know by now, the goal of sumo is to force one's opponent out of the ring or make them touch the ground with anything but the soles of their feet. Hakuho did this in any way possible. He was never too predictable, as seen in this long list of every winning technique he's ever won with. Constantly trying to improve, he studied every aspect of the sport, looking at other successful wrestlers from the past to learn new techniques and approaches. Still, he had strong staples in his sumo strategies that were strenuous to struggle against. Let's start at the tachiai. Hakuho's patented face slap into forearm shoulder blast has been a part of his style for years, at one point in time knocking his opponent out cold. The reason it works so well is the smack to the face momentarily disorients the opponent from one side, while the shoulder forearm blast pushes from the other, allowing Hakuho to either 1. Push his opponent off of him so he could assess what he wanted to do from there, or 2. Go chest to chest and try to get his favorite grip on the belt, the right hand inside and left hand outside his opponent's arms, professionally called Migiyotsu. With this, he had an arsenal at his disposal, from a favorite frontal force out to lifting and throwing his opponent with his outer left grip. But that's just on offense. On defense, it almost seemed as though Hakuho knew what his opponent's next step was gonna be. He was able to break the outer grips opponents had on his belt with his powerful hips, protruding them far back at almost a right angle and wiggling them. Here, using his elbow and arm to break Asa Shoryu's grip while also wiggling his hips, all at the same time, staying on the offense. Other times denying the inner grip entirely by clutching his arm closely to his belt. In sticky situations, he had great ring awareness, knowing how far back he could go without stepping out. When pushed up against the Tawara, he would push back with all his strength, while using his grip to raise his opponent's center of gravity and set up for a reversal or escape. Speed, strength, versatility, balance, tenacity, menacing stoic mental fortitude. These are the traits that define what Hakuho had on the dohyo. He was leagues better than everyone else. Take this bout against 6'8" Koto Oshu, a giant in the sumo world, with the rank of Ozeki that is just below Yokozuna. Although being much larger than Hakuho, he can hardly seem to move him. Hakuho's stance is so solid it's like pushing forward against a wall. Hakuho pivots and moves him to the side, getting a grip on the back of Koto's belt. Hakuho is constantly thinking about how to win with the tools he has. Here, pushing forward and lifting him straight up, possibly trying to get him off balance and go for a throw, but to no avail. Koto Oshu pushes him back with a weird grip on the back of Hakuho's belt, having his long arm over Hak's shoulder. A stalemate ensues for a bit while Hakuho thinks of a way to topple this behemoth, removing his grip from the back of Koto's belt to see how he would react, and when he doesn't, to one of his last bouts against Ozeki Shodai, where he does something I've hardly ever seen him do before. He starts as far back from the Shikiri Sen as possibly allowed, to avoid Shodai's, at the time, powerful charge. Smacking Shodai around and trying for a belt grip while keeping Shodai off his, until Shodai's back is to the edge. He does this waiting tactic, a patient strategy Hakuho has used multiple times in the past, where he waits for his foe to commit to an approach and punishes. It's a method I've never seen another wrestler successfully use, but somehow Hakuho is able to do it, because he instills fear into the hearts of others. His skill and reputation make wrestlers weary to attack knowing if they do, their demise is imminent. Shodai attacks. Hakuho pushes, Shodai weakly tries to come in low with a belt grip, and instead gives Hakuho his favor. The GOAT is moving forward, and Shodai is falling backward. Great fighters have come to try and take the throne, yet couldn't because Hakuho stood in their way. Taking advice from his father, Hakuho treated every bout like it was the final match of every tournament to decide the winner, which gave him the mentality to always try his absolute best. In nearly every match, even at the edge of defeat, Hakuho would never lose heart. Heart, spirit, passion, love. The kindling of motivation that pushes one above and beyond. Without it, Hakuho wouldn't have achieved his title in history. Ever since he was a boy, Hakuho was fascinated with the world of sumo. After seeing a rikishi on the cover of a magazine at age 5, Hakuho told his father he wanted to be one someday. When his father asked him why, he said, "Because they are huge and strong, while I am small and weak." Hakuho has always been a person full of heart. He voluntarily shared the bed with his parents up until the day he left for Japan at 15. When he started, Hakuho said he cried at least 3 times a day because of how rough training was and how much he missed his family. Still, he trudged onwards, not wanting to tarnish his father's name and the name of Mongolia, since they had wrestlers go to Japan for sumo before and give up. Once he earned the legendary rank of Yokozuna at age 22, a rank only 73 people have earned in the history of sumo through winning multiple tournaments, he wanted to honor the title for the sport he loved and look for guidance from past Yokozuna on how to carry himself. The week he was first promoted, he had dinner at the house of the great Yokozuna Taiho, who held the record for the most tournament championships, where he told Hakuho, "When I was Yokozuna, I thought about retiring whenever I lost," which speaks volumes to the legacy Hakuho left behind, doing everything in his ability to win. In that match I showed against Shodai in Hakuho's last tournament, he was racking his brain the night before the match, thinking about how he would defeat him, theory crafting every possible approach, but Hakuho only saw himself losing. That is, until he thought about starting as far back from the starting lines as allowed, which reflects upon another legend he took inspiration from, the 35th Yokozuna Futabayama, who holds the record for most wins in a row, and whose style was reactionary, letting his opponents make the first move. Futabayama was said to be stoic yet fierce in the ring, but gentle and kind outside of it. Seeing a glimpse into the life Hakuho lives outside of the ring, it's clear to see he meets this standard. He's a loving family man, simply seen in these wholesome photos and videos. He holds an annual sumo tournament for kids called the Hakuho Cup, something no Yokozuna has ever done before. He recruits wrestlers who nobody else wants to give a chance to due to their height. He's tough on other rikishi in training because all he wants is for everyone to improve. So many obstacles have been placed in Hakuho's way that have tried to tear his spirit down on the road to success. He felt unloved by fans as a foreigner. The Japanese Sumo Association constantly condemned Hakuho for anything he did all the time, like his face slap into forearm shoulder blast, to showing any emotion at all on the dohyo, saying it was un-Yokozuna-like. Through it all, Hakuho didn't grow bitter or resent the Sumo Association, but stayed humble and dedicated to the sport he loved. One of the greatest motivations for Hakuho was his father, making him proud and honoring his legacy. When his father passed away in 2018, Hakuho became a Japanese citizen and stayed motivated as he wanted to be in the 2020 Japan Olympics, carrying a torch to light the flame for the competition his father participated in. Hakuho also motivated himself by setting goals to break every sumo record, of which he holds the top spot in all but one, for most consecutive bouts won in a row, held by one of his idols, Futabayama. Many periods in his career, Hakuho was the only Yokozuna, bearing the responsibility for being the face of the sport. One can only imagine the amount of stress that can put on one man, but Hakuho led sumo respectfully. He played a major role in keeping the sport alive through the toughest of times. People all over the world wanted to see a legend in action, while Hakuho not only wanted to break records, but for the sport he loved most to thrive, being a spectacle of greatness for the masses while building up the skill and interests of future generations. Nearly every GOAT has their rival for the title. In basketball, Jordan has LeBron. Football, Messi has Ronaldo. Golf, Tiger and Jack. Boxing, Ali and Tyson. And tennis has these two dudes. But in records, nobody stands close to Hakuho. Hakuho loved sumo more than anyone else, more than anyone ever will. He poured his heart and soul into it, taking every effort to be the best and help the sport grow, dedicating every aspect of his life to it, from diet and training to personality and lifestyle. When asked what Yokozuna Sumo was to him, Hakuho said, "Yokozuna Sumo is winning sumo." He was finally able to retire in 2021 after winning a tournament without a single loss, and the ability to pass the Yokozuna torch onto the newly promoted Terunofuji. From his start as a skinny young boy nobody believed in, to the powerful legend who won 45 championships and won more than 1,100 bouts, he carved himself into history. More than his great genetics, further than his immeasurable skill, greater than his lightning-quick wits, it was Hakuho's love and passion for the sport that drove him to success. That is what it takes to be the greatest GOAT of all time.